Let's go, let's go, let's go. What's good, everybody? What's good, everybody?
Mm.
Back, we are back. My name is Jawan. I'm one of your hosts of the Two Young Pastors podcast, uh, where two young pastors, indeed, we talk. And I'm joined by my friend,
Hey.
Pastor Elijah Stanley. Some people call him Dino. If you know, you know. Other
Yeah.
people they call him Pastor. Other people they call him Pastor Elijah. No matter what, you my boy. And indeed, this is Two Young Pastors podcast where two young pastors
Mhm.
we talk about our lives, we talk about various things that we see in ministry, and we also talk about culture and different topics. And
That's true.
man, things are moving, things are moving. And what's interesting, I got a lot for us today. I got a lot
Yeah.
for us, and I want to hear, your thoughts on a number of things.
Let's do it.
And this is kind of sort of like answering the question of how I'm doing
Yeah.
right now. How I'm doing is interested. I want to hear how you're doing too. Okay. Uh, Yet I want to get your thoughts on this, okay?
Yeah.
Because we're coming up on the Easter season. We're coming up on the Easter
Easter.
season. All right. So great time of the year, great time of the year to be alive and to celebrate things.
Mhm.
And listen, man, this past weekend, this Sunday, I saw one of like my favorite preachers,
Mhm.
hardcore kind of guy, um, Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
They just got into like their new facility, and it looks great. And
Mm.
during his sermon, bro,
Yeah, yeah,
during
yeah.
his sermon, and faithfully, he always faithfully like does his best to preach straight from the text. He's not
Yeah.
one of those pastors that tries to come up with catchy titles. He's like, hey, the title of my sermon is like the title of the section that the Bible gives.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
That's the type of guy he is, and they've been like working their way through Matthew for the
Mhm.
past couple of years, right?
Mhm.
Trying to get through the entire gospel for the past couple of years, and they are taking their time.
They spent
Yeah, man.
years in the
Yeah.
Gospel of Matthew. Dang.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, like, one, the church 2819, it's really cool because the name of the church is inspired by Matthew 2819,
Mhm.
which stands for, go ye therefore, um, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
No, let me go back. Go ye therefore, making disciples, aka followers of Christ, followers
Mhm.
of the way,
Mhm.
baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them all the things that I have taught you. Right.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
based on Matthew 28, verse 19. So it's called 2819 Church. Right.
Mhm.
And this church has slowly but surely been blowing up. It's been blowing up for various different things. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's partially because of the fact that, there are a number of individuals who are serious about their faith,
Mhm.
who have been looking for someone who is as intense and genuine, authentic as Pastor Mitchell.
Mhm.
Um, and so, because of that, slowly but surely building up, especially in a world where, if I'm honest, bro, you see a lot more prosperity gospel preaching, a lot more, God's going to bless you, and He's going to do this for you, and He's going to do that for you. And here's the thing: all those things are true. God does want to bless you, right? God does want you to have the best life that you could possibly ever have. Yet, there's an agenda that many of these pastors, preachers have when they're preaching. Then it's not necessarily always because of the fact that they want to teach Christ and Christ crucified, but some individuals may just want the amens. Some
Mm.
individuals may want the money that can come from you, essentially giving them this spiritually motivated message
Yeah.
to help grow their pockets, to help them sell books and things like that. But Philip Anthony Mitchell, man, great guy, right? And I don't know him like that, but he just seems very authentic.
He does.
Um, and so this Sunday, I think like he kind of sort of he made a decision that I think at times many pastors make, right? Um, where you cover a sensitive subject,
Mhm.
and depending on like your perspective, um, and this is just my opinion,
Yeah.
he broached a topic that's sensitive, and I don't think he honored that moment well. right?
Really?
Yeah, so, like, you know, of course, in scripture, it talks about, essentially obeying or submitting to authority, right?
Right.
And so one of the things that, like, he was doing as he was kinda sorta illustrating what the text meant, he was identifying how one day, growing up in New York, um, there's a cop who, like, kinda sorta, like, was harassing him,
Mhm.
uh, and yoked him up, and, he didn't know what he wanted to do. He didn't know what he wanted to do. Um, if he should essentially submit,
Right.
or if he should, like, say something back.
Mhm.
Uh, and what he said, "Listen, Imma be honest, there are a lot of, like, a lot of cats, who get in trouble with the law and who experience essentially," and I'm paraphrasing, "who essentially experience some form of police brutality."
Right.
And he said, like, "Sometimes it's not the cop's fault." He said, that in a number of situations, it's because people don't know how to shut their mouths and,
Mm.
just submit to authority, right? And so what ended up happening,
That's a hot take, but yeah.
it's it's a hot take in today's climate,
Yeah.
you know? Um, when it's not as simple as, well, if you just keep your mouth shut or if you just keep quiet, you'll be fine. Because we've seen in the news instances where police officers have harassed and gone overboard when it's come to um, engaging with black people,
Right.
black people, brown people, right? And so when he said that, he has a big stage, man. He has a big
He
stage.
does. Yeah.
Like, it's not just like us or people who even people with less, like we're blessed to have over 1,000 people watch our service each week, right? He's in a situation where he has thousands,
Yeah. I
at
think it's the
least,
fastest growing church in America, right? Like, it's
like, and I wouldn't be
yeah.
surprised, right? And so the reality is that when he said that, in my head, I'm like, I like in the same way that we were talking about Marvin Sapp,
Mhm.
and saying like probably would have done it differently.
Yeah.
Like, one, I would have ensured that there is an understanding that, hey, we know what systemic racism is.
Mhm.
And for the white people who are watching and the other non-black people, right?
Mhm.
But it's specifically the white people who are watching
Mhm.
need to have a foundation that systemic racism exists,
Mm.
right? Let's not just talk about the fact that, hey, let's not just talk about the fact that, yes, police brutality is a thing. And black people, especially, should just keep their mouths shut and just learn to, work with and be submissive, submit to authority to avoid some of these situations.
Mhm.
Like, you have to put it in its proper context
Yeah, you can't
that,
just yeah.
like, you got to put in its proper context that, one, we are targeted at a disproportionate amount.
Right.
Like, there are certain neighborhoods in America that are policed harder,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
are patrolled harder
Mhm.
than other areas. And there's research, there's data to back this up. I even remember, um, what is the book? What is the book called? Is it The New Jim Crow? Is it The New Jim Crow? The author, she was talking about the fact that when it comes to drugs, right? It's interesting that you have so many black people in prisons, Elijah,
Mhm.
right? You have so many black people in prisons, um, and they're in prison for charges related to drugs.
Right. Right.
Yet there was a study that was done, and it was proven that essentially just about like black people and white people, like all like a number of the races that are here, they kind of sort of use
Mhm.
drugs
At
like
the
to the
same
same
level.
extent,
Yeah. Yeah.
yet the problem is that there are more black people in prisons than white people.
Right.
White people make up over over
The
over
majority of the
60
country.
to 70% of
Yeah.
the country.
Yeah.
Yet there are more black people in jail because of drug related like crimes.
Right.
And so they're like you have to have a very open understanding of the fact that systemic racism exists,
Mhm.
right? Before you talk about anything race related
Mhm.
and how we as black people engage with the law,
Mhm.
with authorities, there needs to be a proper understanding of of systemic racism.
Mhm.
And just being honest, I don't think that they have that at that church. I don't think they have it at the church.
Really?
I don't think no, I don't like that. I don't think that they possess that that knowledge where the people in the room, and especially the people who are watching, right? Because listen, he's blowing up. Like
He
the
is.
church is blowing up.
Yeah.
And it's not just blowing up with black people,
It's
it's
everybody.
blowing up because white people are watching.
Yeah.
And so there has to be an understanding that we support and ride for our people. I think that that's just extremely important in the times that we're living in the times
Mhm.
that we're living in. And so I found that interesting, and it's just got me thinking about interesting things that kind of sort of happen,
Yeah.
how at times, in order when individuals get into interesting spaces, especially that evangelical space,
Mhm.
right? Which is populated by a lot of white people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There are certain comments that can begin to be made
Mhm.
that can seem a little weird. I'm not saying that this is him,
Yeah.
right? My opinion is really that in that moment, I don't think he stewarded that moment well
Mm.
as a preacher who is black.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't want
Mhm.
to just say it's a black preacher because I don't think that he typically employs
The
um, the black preaching uh, techniques that honor our tradition.
Mhm.
Yet he is a preacher who is black.
Mhm.
And so, as a preacher who is a black man, I don't think he necessarily honored it effectively. So,
Mhm.
I want to ask, what are your thoughts? I know I think you're possibly just hearing this for the first time, but like, what are your thoughts as you
Yeah.
hear the situation?
No, so I was introduced to him, and I had to look him up because I was introduced to his church through one of the YouTube sermons that he did because I was just looking up something and I just like to watch and consume sermons, and I was watching a sermon on Matthew, and then his sermon title popped up and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I clicked on it and I watched it. And you're right, he's very authentic, and he gives a lot when he preaches. Like, he is not someone that holds back.
No.
He doesn't have the he doesn't have the elements of black preaching, but he has the one element where it is everything he has. He's
Yes.
laying out
Passionate.
there. He's
Yeah.
passionate, and he has generated other controversial things as well before
Yes.
this, and I think I caught those first. So you saying this, it kind of ties in. A part of it, I believe, is a new leader. When you're a new leader and you're given so much responsibility and the light starts to shine on you, there are just genuine mistakes that you make because you have not been in that space yet. So I yeah,
I think he's actually been pastoring his church for over 10 years.
I'm talking about the spotlight
Oh, okay.
that's
Okay.
now put on the church. Like, there
Yes.
are probably pastors out there that have done the same thing that he did, right?
Yes.
But the reason that we all know about it is because he has that spotlight.
Platform is much bigger. Yeah. Understood.
Platform is so much bigger. And now that you have the platform, you have to start thinking about everything else that goes with having a platform. You have to start contextualizing, you have to start putting in uh disclaimers, right? Like, you have to start thinking out of the local church context that is not ordinary and is not taught in seminary. So you have to really step out of it. So I think that's what happened, because he did the same thing when they were talking about having a new church building and getting a new church building. And he said some things that I think were appropriate, but not in context. And then he realized that it wasn't in
What
context.
did he say? What did he say?
He
Because
did something about like, hey, um, I, I know that God's gonna give for our new church. And he said something that he then had to get up the next Sunday and clarify, because people didn't understand. It was something about giving, and something about expecting God to do something even if people don't give. Like, was something in that vein. I'm forgetting exactly what it was, but he was saying something that people took offense to, I think. And he had to go up and give context to why he was saying that, and then also share with the church's immediate neighbors that they weren't kicking them out, but they could no longer fit in the community because people were taking up parking spots, and they want to be mindful of their neighbors. So he had to come out and then clarify, because people were being upset online watching. So I think that's what happened, but you're right. I think it speaks to the context, man. Like, being brown in America is one thing, but being black in America is a completely different thing. There's some overlap,
yeah,
but the history, the context, there are some things that I can never imagine having to go through, just because Americans and our system treats people differently, and that's just with our history. And being a pastor, we have to take that extra step of contextualizing things, even if we
yeah,
are at a local context. I mean, at our church, I do see that the majority of our population is African American,
mhm,
but we have those small pockets of different ethnicities, Asian, um, and Hispanic, and Indian, and we have to be careful
yeah,
that this church is a representation of who comes there, yes, but also there's a history behind the church,
yeah,
and being truthful and being honest with that. And I think in those sermonic moments when we're teaching and when we're preaching, being honest that even though there are other people that might not share the same perspective as us, we still have to be honest with ourselves and our context and sharing those things. That's a truth that I have to come to and say, hey, like, this is who we are, and this is what makes us us, and what makes this space so great.
yeah,
That I think is something about the preaching style that I had to realize, that it's not just a style, but really it's a retelling, right,
yeah,
of history. And Tim Keller, I'm not sure if you know him.
yeah.
He he did a social justice sermon out of Jonah, and
Hmm,
he's talking to evangelicals, like white evangelicals, and he's saying, and this is in the first Trump era. So
yeah.
so he's speaking when he's getting all of the clout of immigration, and he's talking about Mexicans, and he's talking about like all these things, right? And
Tim Keller.
no, like
Oh,
Trump
I,
is,
I,
right?
I was about to say what? What?
Trump is, and then people realize that he's getting his votes from the evangelical community. So Tim Keller then goes out, and then he's saying, "Hey, let me speak to you from the Bible about what the Bible says about these things."
Hmm,
And the room got quiet, because as a white man, he's talking to other white evangelicals, saying, God is really telling us to take care of these people that you want to then send out of the country. And then someone came out. Someone came out of the crowd and asked a question. And then he was like, "Hey, I'm not gonna get political and tell you who to vote for, but if you read your Bible and you go through what Jonah went through, and you see you see what he talked about. God gives mercy even in those situations where it's not deserved, and the people of God can be wrong sometimes on a national level. And people, and bro, like when I heard that and I heard what you said, it reminded me of that, because as preachers, we have to be careful of the people that listen to us,
Yeah.
because they come to us for a word of God, but a part of what we do is also correction
Yeah.
in those misunderstandings. And because that church is growing so hard, uh, a lot of what you said is right. He has to be careful. Um,
Got to.
he has to be careful because the white evangelicals will use what he said, bro. Like I can
Yeah.
already see it happening. Be like, well, your pastor just said, don't like, and I can see it being used out of context, because
Yeah.
that's what the issue is. It's going to be used out of context.
And and it it's so true. Like there are several white Christians, and not to make this about race, right? There are several white Christians who think that it's okay to be racist. Um, Let me start here. There are a number of Christians who think that like all they need is to believe that Jesus died for them,
Mm,
right? There
mhm.
are several believers who think like they say, "Hey, I can get to heaven as long as like I believe that Jesus died for me," right?
Yeah, yeah.
And with that, they think that they can kind of sort of do whatever they want. They can mess
In the
up.
meantime, yeah.
Yeah. And with that, like I actually saw someone on YouTube actually talk about this.
Oh wow.
How like they didn't understand that, yeah, um, you can believe that Jesus died for you, but you also have to strive to be like him.
Hmm.
You know, you can't believe it, say you believe in him,
Hmm.
yet you're being hateful to various groups of people,
Hmm.
and you're saying, "Oh, it's all going to go away when I go to heaven anyway." No, that's not the type of that's not the type of world that God intended to create.
Right.
Like that's not the type of afterlife in for eternity that
Hmm.
God desires, because that's not justice. That's not justice.
Right.
And so I recognize that there are several individuals who, if you give them an out,
Hmm.
they will run with that thing. And at times there are too many black people who give individuals who are hateful, who are bigots, an out.
Hmm.
And they do it mistakenly. And I just want to say this. You said this word, and I just had to say it again. You said, as depending on your stage, you have to give disclaimers,
Hmm.
right? Disclaimers are so crucial
Hmm.
when you are speaking in groups that are not as homogenous, are
Hmm.
not as on the same page as you might think,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like given proper context so that uh you can make strong comments. I think it's necessary. I think
It
that's
is.
necessary. So I just wanted to share that that we're living in interesting time. We're living in interesting times where some of our speakers are going into these spaces,
Hmm.
and they're sacrificing their blackness,
Mm.
right, while in these spaces. And so I just wanted to say that.
Man,
Don't want it
you
to be too much about race.
well, I'm gonna take it right back because I have a question. Do you? Because that brings up a really important, not important, but a dialogue that we as Christians have to have.
Okay.
Because it's interesting that we have some churches that are predominantly white, some churches that are predominantly black, some churches that are predominantly Indian, some churches that are predominantly Korean and Hispanic,
Yeah.
right? And we understand the history, right, of why we got here, right?
White supremacy. Yeah.
Right. And we understand that we're left to deal with that legacy, right?
Yeah.
Um, my question now is, his stage is so big and it's continuing to grow that not his parishioners are now national and international as
Mhm,
well.
mhm.
Do you think he has to cater now, not just to the people that are in his church in terms of messaging and everything else, right? Should he strive to make his church, um, what's the word? A mixed
Palatable?
demographic of members. So, do you think because his reach is growing and his platform is growing, as he preaches, as he teaches, as the worships go on, that he has to strive as a leader to be because inclusive isn't the right word, right? Because everyone is invited and everyone can be there, but should he change the language, the worship styles, the things that make the church that church to be more accommodating of other races?
So, like, whenever I look at the church online, it seems very black,
Mhm.
right? And that's not a pun. Like,
Right.
I know that he only wears black, but I barely see white people, right?
Yeah.
I barely see white people. Um, and I think that's huge. I think that's huge. Um, because I think that you'll see brown people hanging out and being in a space with black people. But typically I always I it seems like I always see black people more than anything
Mhm.
else.
Right.
I think that his first church is always the people who he is greeting and interacting with in his face,
Mm.
right? That like I think it has to be that way. It has to be that way, bro. Like you can't um you can't prioritize the people online
Mm.
um because 9 times out of 10 you're not reaching them as much as you're reaching the people who are in person.
Mhm. Mhm.
They even have a name, a term for the people who are members or part of their community online. They're called digital disciples,
Mhm.
right? But they're not the people who are at that church,
Yeah.
like coming up with programs weekly.
Yeah.
They're not the ones coming in and worshiping monthly.
Mhm.
Uh, th- Anyone can give a donation,
Mhm.
right? And here's what I want to say: the same way that someone can give a donation in one season, that same person can take their donation away in a different season.
Mm.
And see, here's what I think is so crucial: you can't forget where you came from,
Yeah. Yeah.
because some people like you some of the time. They don't like you all the time, though.
Mm.
And I'm gonna say this:
That's
white
good.
people like black things, right? It is
Mhm.
known white people like black things. A lot of like the hip things that are said, a lot of the vernacular that's used,
Right. Clothes,
like a lot of
shoes.
times,
Yeah.
like from TikTok and stuff like that, a lot of times it started by black people,
Mhm.
right? Things like "it's giving" or "eat,"
Mhm.
she ate." Those are things that like black women said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and people like to use our stuff. They just don't like black people all the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And so it's weird. It's weird. And you got to understand where you fit in society.
Mhm.
Where there are some individuals who like what you have to offer, but they don't really always like you personally.
Mm. Yeah.
And this has always been a weird space to kind of sort of like navigate through, especially as I learn it more and more. Matter of fact, one of the things I'll add on to this.
Mhm.
What's interesting, bro, is like I was paying attention to even like some of our posts, right?
Mhm.
And I realized that to some people, you may be more palatable than me just because of the color of our skin. You
Really?
know, bro. Like, yeah, yeah,
Th-
yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Just because of the color of our skin,
That's true.
and let's say there's a difference. Like you're Indian, right?
Yeah.
And I think you have an opportunity to be more connected to your roots than I do, right?
Explain that a little bit.
So I don't have a place. I don't know what my home country in Africa would have been,
Mm. Mm.
right? Like at least you coming from, and I may pronounce this improperly, Dunjor.
That was completely wrong, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
South
completely
India.
like
Yeah.
you coming from South India, at least you know the city, at least you know the country where you came from.
Yeah.
And so like you can learn about your culture.
Right.
Like I would have to take one of those tests
Mm-hmm.
um to get a possibility of where my people could have originated from.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no clarity. I don't have people at home,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is a major difference between African American culture
Mm-hmm.
and African culture, right? Whereas what I've seen could be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? But let's say in a number of Asian spaces, what I see is that if you're South Asian or if you are um, Chinese, Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
Korean, um, what I see is that even if you're American,
Yeah.
there's still going to be a population of people who
Right.
are viewing and who are supporting you from across the ocean.
That's true for me too.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I say this to say that it's a different palette.
Completely.
It's an interesting space to be in because Africans, while they may support, there's always going to be kind of sort of like a separation because our culture is really a little different. It's a little different.
You're absolutely right, man. You're absolutely right. Cause I j- there are two ways
Yeah.
that I see this, and really one question that popped up in my
Yeah.
mind for our church context. And then the last part that you said, people can be supportive, but when you hit the ground running, trying to bring both worlds together, right? There's always not a a, a nice, smooth transfer between those that are here in America and those that
Mhm.
try to go back to where they came from, either in Japan, in Africa, in Europe, or anywhere else. There's a cultural divide there.
Yeah.
And even I remember watching this thing from DW. They
Mhm.
did this segment where it was called the Welcome Back Home Day in Ghana, where they invited um, families that had heritage in Ghana back to the homeland, and they caught up with them. I think 5 years afterwards, after they came back. And in the interview, it was really interesting to see that the Americans that had went back, they were having issues integrating back into society because
Mhm.
the Ghanaians that were there had an issue with them being there because of financial struggles that they brought, because it would increase the prices in the neighborhoods
Mercy.
because
Mercy.
they were Americans and bringing American dollars into the community. So vendors would then start increasing prices. So the native Ghanaians were like, "Hey, like we like you being here, but you're making life harder for us."
Yeah.
A- And then it's interesting to see that the Americans that went over are like, "Hey, like I'm not rich,
Yeah.
right? And you can't blame me because I went through what I went through. My family went through it. My heritage is here and there, and I'm just trying to find my roots back." And it's really interesting finding that they both want to be there. Like both groups want the other to be there, but there's just a disconnect happening because of life.
Hmm.
And if that can happen with individuals that want to get back together, that that want to really be with each other, right? And the last thing I'll say about that is Americans are going back to their native countries, right?
Yeah.
And then those that are in those countries want to come to America.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it's just in that interview, bro, I was like eating my food and I was watching and I was like, this is really interesting
It is.
seeing
It is.
how that works, bro, because there's so much dynamics and complexity there.
Yeah. Really.
Like there's no way of figuring that out. Even in India, right? There's a pushback to Christianity because there are Indians that are saying, "Hey, that is a white man's
Religion.
religion." And then the examples that they use are Christian churches in India where the Indians look white. Like they wear skinny
Oh.
jeans, they have the haircuts, they play the guitar, they play CCM, they have a diet that is more Western, they have a language that's more Western, and they're like, "Hey, you're bringing a white culture into India, and we are historically Indian. So this religion is nothing more than the white man trying to reconquer us after we
Yeah.
kicked him back out." So that's like
Yeah.
I got that, and then when they gave me the opportunity to dress in my native heritage clothes, I
Mm.
had to think about that because I personally don't like wearing it because I identify with the clothing that way. But then
Yeah.
I thought about it. I was like, I'm an American. I was born in India, but I moved to America at a very young age, and I was like, so I identify as American. It's where I live. It's what I know. But for Indians that are there, I am not Indian. Like
Mm.
I'm
American.
American because
Yeah.
I
American.
sound different. I act different. I look different. My skin tone's the same way, but I think different. So I
Yeah.
was like, hey, I have to find a gap. So I decided to wear the clothes that they very graciously bought me. And as I think about it, bro, like I want to know what your opinion is. Should churches that are predominantly one race strive to incorporate other races?
No. I don't think that you should strive to. Um,
Or
I
maybe this
I
is
think you should be
yeah.
open. I think you should be open,
Hmm.
to being inclusive of other races, but I don't think you should strive to. Um, yeah, I don't think you should strive to. We also live in a world where, once again, white supremacy is has impacted all of us,
Hmm.
right? And when I say white supremacy, I mean like the ideology that the lighter your skin is, the better you are, and the darker your skin is, um, the more disadvantages you are. There
Hmm.
are several individuals who don't feel safe around Black people, and it's not because they've necessarily experienced certain things for themselves, but it's
Hmm.
because of what the news has shown them
Correct.
and what media has said about Black people, disproportionately to other races, and so there is obviously some manufactured propaganda that controls certain things. But I would my initial answer is that I don't I don't I don't think that you have to push for it. I just think that there needs to be understanding from the leadership of the church,
Mhm.
pastor, board, elders, where we are open. We are open to other cultural worship experiences, other cultural um, worship practices, as well as other cultural um, giftings,
Mhm.
right? There are different styles. There are different styles, and so I think that there shouldn't be a demonization where you demonize a certain form of worship, certain style, uh,
Mm.
because it comes from a certain group of people. And so I don't think that you necessarily have to strive. I just think that you don't need to demonize and put down what doesn't need to be put down, if that makes sense.
It
What do you
does.
think?
I am 100% with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend and I had this conversation driving up to a speaking assignment when I was in college, and
Mm,
I noticed that there were so many different churches, and what even in Adventism, right? There are so many different ethnic churches based on their background, and even in the Indian context, there are language churches. So you could be Indians, have the same background, but you go to a church that has your language, and that language has certain customs and things that are attached to it in the
yeah.
state. And I was like, hey, I don't like at that time. I did not see the need for churches that are predominantly made up of one culture. Because there are individuals that say a weakness of Christianity is that we segregate ourselves into ethnic and racial churches,
Mm,
and that's a weakness. And then they say, "Hey, because you self segregate yourselves into these individual churches, that's a weakness."
mm,
And I looked at that argument, and I would kind of look at and say, like, no, we should all strive to come together as one church, without realizing what you said, that churches are built up of communities, right, based on the word of God, for the kingdom, but they all carry different responsibilities in the kingdom. They all, like, one functions as a hand, one functions as a foot, one's a finger, one's a toe. Like they all have different groups that they can reach. And I think about it as this way: there are onboarding churches, right? To bring you into a relationship with Christ, and those churches I think are Transformation, Elevation, Bethel. I think there are some onboarding churches, right,
yeah.
where their number one task is to bring in
Yeah.
as many people as possible and introduce them to Jesus at a style and at a level that they're familiar with.
Yeah.
And then there are other churches that are they emphasize getting deeper into the word, and
Yeah.
I see, and I've come to the realization that every church does not have to look the same.
Mhm.
Like, we don't always have to have a multicultural
Agreed.
church.
Agreed. 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 And dude, I'll say this, because hear me. Um, if racism, if white supremacy wasn't a thing, I would definitely say we should strive,
Mm,
right? We should strive to honor as many different cultures as possible.
mhm,
Y- But because it does exist,
mm, yeah,
and individuals tend to fall in line with Eurocentric forms of worship, I think it's necessary for these various groupings and for these various predominantly cultural churches to exist, to preserve culture that is not white.
mhm,
Um, if we lived in a more idealistic world where certain things were not being demonized or looked down upon by certain groups of people that think they're better,
mhm,
man, of course. And I think that in some areas it's good. It's
mhm,
good. Yet I only am admitting this in the same way that Paul was giving an admonition as to why some people should get married in the Bible. He was like, "Hey, if you're burning too much,
yeah, yeah,
like if you're burning with lust too much, hey, get married. This isn't necessarily God, but this is this is just me understanding the situation, and so this is me understanding our sociological situation. Like the reality is that some of us we have to indeed uh, we have to exist. We have to
mhm,
exist. And to your second point, bro, I haven't watched the bigger churches, like the mega churches, in a minute,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Because once again, And I don't wanna make any assumptions because I haven't been watching.
Yeah.
Yet recently, especially with like all the terrorists and stuff like that that's been impacting the country. Like one thing I've been saying is like, man, a lot of rich people are awful people, right? Um, and I'm realizing that the things that they did to get rich
We're
were awful,
yeah.
right? Where they really do, like the Bible says, like, hey, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Mhm.
I really do see that they not only love money, but they love money more than they love their fellow man.
Yeah.
Um, and so I I I say this only because of the situation that that recognize that there are some individuals. I lost it because I just got told that I was getting a call. um, I say this. What am I saying?
The tariffs and rich individuals.
I say this because I recognize that there are some Christians, right? Some believers who don't come to church because they really want to be a better person, right?
Huh.
And there are a lot of people who are in church who hear the messages week in and week out,
Mhm.
and uh, and a lot of times don't make any sizable change
Mhm. Mhm.
in their lives,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I was even just watching. I was even just watching a YouTuber who was kind of sort of talking about like um, just once again reflecting on where the country is after
Mhm.
the election.
Mhm.
And what was said is, hey, I hope that for all of you individuals who have just been watching my page, that you haven't just been like kind of sort of filling up off of leftist commentary and filling up off of, oh man, this situation is bad, and here's why the situation is bad, and here's why our country is in peril, and what we need to do about that, right?
Mhm.
Um, but he said, listen, all of this will be pointless if in addition to hearing what I said, it would be pointless if you didn't actually get up and begin to be a change agent in your local community.
Mm.
And here's the thing, there are a lot of us who just like the people who tune into stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
We hear about these dialogues and we hear about what the country should look like, how we should treat each other, and it really just becomes entertainment. It becomes
Mhm.
entertainment. It's not a I'm looking at this because I want change in my life. I'm looking at this, I'm tuning in because I want to see how I can get involved. I want to see how I can mobilize. I want to see how I can stand up for other people in my community and for other communities that really need assistance. And so I'm realizing that even in church, man,
Mm.
there are a number of people who listen to our messages faithfully, hear it, and it becomes entertainment.
Yeah.
And I say this because I think that a number of individuals who end up going to these larger churches, they're going because they want to be entertained. They're going because they want to be entertained. And this is not to make a separation to say that, hey, smaller churches are better and provide more quality than these mega churches. No, because even at our churches here in Adventism, I think that an aspect where we want to be entertained too,
Mhm.
because we kind of sort of just want to hear the same things reaffirm that we believe. We want to hear a pastor or a preacher talk about the last days. We want to hear a person talk about prophecy and what's about to come. And we want to hear people talk about the Trinity. We want to hear people talk about tithe. And we want to hear people talk about baptism. We want to hear the same things over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And the problem is a lot of us we hear it, but we don't really do anything different to really make it uh more beneficial to our lives.
Yeah.
And so as I just consider that, bro, I consider the fact that at large, most churches are in trouble. most entities are in trouble because we're not taking this as seriously as we need to be. So that's my thought. Those are my thoughts.
Man,
So
I know that today we were supposed to go into another theme and another topic, bro. But we are, I believe, a part of what we talk about here. And if you're new listening, or it's your first time, and it's your first episode, giving that behind the scenes of what goes through our minds when we're doing certain things, and the context that you gave to what that pastor did. It's 118 or one. What's the church name?
2819 church.
28
2819 church. Hear me.
2819 church.
Hear me. Love the church. I love what they're doing. I love the mission, and I really do support them. I just have to say that I was disappointed. I was disheartened. I was disheartened when I saw when I heard those comments. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I was conflicted. There we go.
Yeah. Like, if you ever want to go into a leadership position, your thinking has to change. You are no longer someone that can, like, every word that you say, every phrase that you say can be misunderstood if you leave any room for interpretation. Is what I found, is you don't want to leave any room for anyone's imagination to get in there. And oh, man, this is the last thing I'll say, bro, and then we'll
Yeah.
wrap up. I,
Yeah.
I, I walked into our fellowship hall after one of our AYM programs, and I was sharing that I had gone on vacation, right, with my
Mm,
family, on a cruise, and that I brought Leah along with us,
yeah.
right? And then I immediately, after I said that, I immediately clarified, and I said my dad was there, my mom was there, they had their own room, my uncle and aunt was there, they had their own room, and then Leah and I did not just share a room. um and and it was all young adults, and they looked at me, they're like, hey, like, no worries, like, we understand what you're saying, like, you don't have to clarify. And
I
then,
do.
right, and then someone else in that group was just like, no, like, you have to clarify, right, like, I can't imagine living and having to clarify every statement I make and have a disclaimer for every statement I make, because you can't leave any room for imagination, and allow
Yeah.
other people to interpret what you're saying. So as you were speaking, like, that popped up in my head. We have to clarify, even if it's innocent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think and dude, I think the longer you are in it and the more you have the right people around you, the better you get at being able to speak in a way um that lends to you being very cautious on how you speak
Mhm,
and how you speak on certain subjects.
mhm.
It leads to it. It leads to it. It really
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Like I think that if you're in a small church, let's say you could talk about sensitive subjects like sexuality. You could talk about politics. But like the higher you go, I think it naturally you're going to have to learn how to dance that dance
Yeah,
a little bit more responsibly, a little bit more responsibly. So
yeah,
those are my thoughts. Essentially, that's how I'm feeling.
yeah.
Am I free? I'm freezing.
You
There we
were, and
go.
now you're better. Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what just happened, but that's how I'm doing, bro. I didn't have an opportunity to really ask before we
It's
go. Before we
cool.
go, how
Yeah.
you doing? How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm all right. I'm all right. 50 minutes in, I'm all right. We're moving along. The year has, I know it started for everyone, but it is picking up more and more. And I'm just excited, man, because I know that God is doing something. I know He's preparing the both of us. And I
Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the what the remainder of this year has to hold, because we're getting ordained in June. That's coming up faster and faster. We have some
More money.
transitions, and I'm looking forward to that, bro, and seeing
Okay.
what God's gonna do. We have some exciting events coming up,
Mention yeah, man.
as well. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it, bro. It's stressful. It doesn't get easier. One of my friends, he was like, so he's a doctor, right? And then he was like, "Hey, you want to hang out?" And I was like, "Nah, I can't." And then he said, "Man, I'm happy I'm not a pastor. It's rough. I have to neglect everything to be there." That was a joke. That was a joke. But like I was like, yeah, like from the outside it
Sheesh.
looks that way, where it looks like we're neglecting things, but really there are some seasons where you have to just put your head down a- and grind through it. So
Yeah.
it's been good, man. But we can catch up in our next episode too. You want to make sure that you subscribe to the Two Young Pastors podcast. Again, my name is Elijah, and I am joined, as always, by the amazing, illustrious Jawan. And it's our privilege to uncover and peel back the curtain of what pastoral life looks like and what we think and how we process through things. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. You want to like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We're on Apple Podcasts and we're on Spotify Podcasts. And you want to make sure that you subscribe to it. Leave us a review, put a comment down so we can start to engage with you. Until the next one, we'll catch y'all later.